So here the Rebbe is going to, first of all, he's going to speak about a very basic, obvious question that when a person learns Chumash, they should have this question. And even if other Mefarshim address this question, we know that Rashi doesn't address this question. But there's a term that the Rebbe usually says, klotz kasha. Klotz kasha means a question that stands in the middle, just like bull etz. That's what a klotz is. Just like a piece of wood that's just like standing in the middle of your way. And then based on this, the Rebbe is going to have an amazing, like, if you want, chidush, I think, in what Avraham and Sarah happened by them when they gave birth. And it was that their birth did not just affect them personally. It wasn't only about themselves, but it was about the entire world. And also how this has to do with our responsibility to the entire world. And how it has to do with our bringing about others that are not Jewish to be able to be Mekayim the Sheva Mitzvos that they're supposed to do. Let's see it inside. At the end of our parsha, it speaks about that Avraham Avinu got married again to Keturah, and he had 6 children. He had 6 sons with her. Last week's parsha, we spoke about it. It was a big miracle, a big mess. It wasn't just because Sarah was 89 or 90 years old then. Since he was 100 years old, it was not normal for him to give birth then. Will he give birth at that time? In other words, Avraham was surprised as well. Vim Sarah bastishim shana tailored. Vavram v'Sarah's Canaan born by Yom Gomer. Vatitzchak Sarah bekir b'leimer acher b'loisi oisli edna v'adoini zakin. Meaning that even because of Avram, it was not natural that I should give birth. V'adoini zakin. V'atoimer mi milal Avram Gomer ki elati bein liz kunov. When he was old. So it was even unnatural, not just for Sarah to give birth then when she was 90. It was not natural for Avraham to give birth because he was 100. That's how bad it was that they suspected that Avraham Avinu couldn't give birth and therefore had to be Avimelech. Arboim shana la'achli leidas Yitzchok Yishohaya ben Kuf Mem shana. That's how old he was when he remarried Keturah or married Keturah. Loy nisparish b'kosam shezel davar nisri umufla b'chulu. He says that Rashi explains that Yitzchok, when he came back when he brought back Hagar to Avram, which Keturah was Hagar, that was the time when he met Rivka for the first time. And it says that he was 40 years old. So that means that Avram gave birth to Yitzchok when he was 100 years old. 40 years old Yitzchok, so that means Avram was 140. And 140, he remarried Hagar, and then he had 6 children. And the Torah doesn't seem to explain that there's anything miraculous about it and so on. The Ramban holds that it wasn't a miracle for Avraham. The miracle was because of Sarah. And the Ramban brings a proof from this case about Keturah. Not just one, 6 children he had from Keturah. But he's saying, all the things that we just now brought before, that Avraham said, will I be able to give birth 100 years old? And Sarah said that, and the Litzani Ador said that. Everybody was in agreement. Avraham, Sarah, the people in the generation were in the agreement. That makes no sense for Avraham to give birth. So therefore, you cannot really learn in Pshuta Shel Mikra the way that Rambam wants to say that was normal for Avraham as a 100-year-old to give birth. And if, for whatever reason, you want to tell me that Rashi does hold that it's normal, should have said it openly. Rashi's own words indicates the opposite, that it was not normal for Avram to give birth. 500 years old, but may Avram nismatu hashanim kvar ubo tashus koyach ba'olam utzei ulamad ma'asara derdish menoich but Avram shemiru told the same b'nei samach u'bnei ayin that you see they decreased less and less the ages when you go through the 10 generations from Noach to Avram. It got less and less. So you see already that by the time Avram came around, the age of giving birth was younger. So therefore, it was not a regular, a normal thing for Avram to give birth at 100. Va'afilim timtzolaim she'etz l'Avram loy hoysa tashus koyach adi Yosef ben Meya oy shela'achar zman de Avram Sarah zakenim. It says when it speaks about right before it speaks about the Malach telling Avram that he and his wife will have children. It says that right before that it says Avram Sarah zakenim. But afterwards, we'll soon bring a medrash that Chazar l'Narusay, Avram Avinu got back his youth. He became young again. V'hoylid b'Yosef ben Meya, but that was all fine then. In the beginning, in Parshas Lech Lecha, where it speaks about Avram giving birth, and Avraham and Sarah giving birth, fine, it makes sense. I'm sorry, not Parshas Vayera. Last week's Parsha, it talks about them giving birth, so it makes sense. But Harela Achri Zenamar Parshasenu Oid Pam Vavram Zakin Baba Yamim. And there's a very famous question. Why does it repeat it? It already said when it was talking about Avram and Sarah getting the news from the Malachim and Parshas Vayera, it already said Avram and Sarah Boim Bayamim. Why does it say again that Avram was Zakin? Hainu, this means to say, Shahaya Etzloi Zikna Shenoisef La'acharze. There was one type of being old that was previous, and then afterwards, in our parsha, he was even considered more old, like we're soon going to see what the Medrash says. Vim Kain, Harilodus B'nei Keturah B'Yos Ben Kufmem, he davar nisi, because whatever happened with his age then, if he was able to give birth, he wasn't able to give birth, if he had returned to his youth, but now it says again, Vavram Zakin, which means that he was more old than he was before. He was more elderly, and therefore he was less shaykh to giving birth. And he's going to bring a medrash that talks about these two psukim, the two times that it says that Avram was considered old. Okay, move on with the medrash al kasa of Avram Zakin Goimer. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Kvar Ksiv Avram v'Sara Zakenim, Ma Tamad Loima v'Avram Zakin. All the Mefarshim talk about it. Mamar Chassidus talks about this. Why does it say twice? It says about right before the Malachim told them that they're going to have children. It says over there that Avram v'Sara Zakenim, and then in our parsha it says again v'Avram Zakin. We already said he's old. So in other words, there must be a chiddush. There must be something new that the Torah is telling us about the age of Avram. Ella. So one explanation the Medrash says, Ella Sheikh Zireh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Limei Naroisov. Then, when the nest of Avram and Sarah giving birth, so even though it says that he was old, but the Eibishter made a nest, that he became young again. Therefore, in our parsha, Tzarech Lichtev Pam Shniya Avram Zakin, that now he became old again. There's different levels of old. And you could see, you'll sometimes see in the picture of very, very old people, sometimes they like to show pictures of 100-year-old people or whatever, you see mamish, they're dried out, they're shriveled up. So he's saying these are the two types of zikna. It says, Avram, the Sarah Zakenim, they're old, but they weren't like shriveled up, they weren't dried up. In our parsha, where it says Avram Zakin Baba Yamim, it's talking about an old type of shriveled person, no moisture left. Shafilim Timtzolaim. Sheleidas Yitzchok Hoisen Nes Mitzad Avram. Shezikna V'Tashas Koyach Hashech Sleilad Eloi Sholta Allah for whatever reason. But that was then, before the pasuk said V'Avram Zakin in our parsha. Mikol Malkim Tzarech Lenes Bishvil Adladas Habanim Keturah Shahaisa La'achre Shekvar Namar Oidapam Avram Zakim Baba Yamim. So therefore the question is, why doesn't the Torah speak about it as being a Nes? So the point that the Rebbe is going to explain essentially is that really Avraham Avinu's being able to give birth even 40 years later was all a continuation of the first Nes that he was able to give birth at 100. And we'll explain inside. Yitzchok Namar Vatoimer Sarah Tzchaik Asali Elikim. And here's an interesting thing. And from this, the Rebbe is going to build an amazing chiddush. Kol Hashemeya Yitzchak Liyu. What's going on? Whoever hears will laugh. There's a lot of times where it says names in the Torah. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, whatever. It says Yaakov. It says the names in the Torah, why they were called a certain name. But it doesn't bring in that whoever hears, I was going to say this and this. All of a sudden, when it came to Yitzchok, it says, you know what the meaning of the name Yitzchok? It's not I'm going to laugh. It could have been enough. Call him Yitzchok, because I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be laughing. I had a child. No. Kol Hashemeya. Everybody who hears is going to laugh. So Pirish Rashi. So to explain that, what is the meaning over here of Kol Hashemeya? It says Harbe Akaris Nifkedu Ima, Harbe Cholim Nisrapu Baviyah, Harbe Tfilis Nanu Ima, V'Rav Schoi Chaya Ba'olam. So when her prayers were answered, so then a lot of help came down to the world. Reish Hanes the latest Yitzchok Chaya Ba'olam Gazeh Shegaram Yeshua V'Atzala B'Chol Ha'olam Ad Shehevi Shesimcha V'Rav Schoi Chaya Ba'olam. Ubezeh Yuv Mashkasa V'Rashi Shamal HaPasik Heinika Banim Sarah Mao Banim Lashon Rabim. She only had one son. She only had Yitzchok. What's this Heinika Banim Sarah? So it says over there, Rashi explains, V'yoyim HaMishta Heviu HaSarah, he says, B'neihem Imahen V'heinika Oisam. Shayo Oimlis La Yolda Sarah Ela Sufia V'Imen Ashok. They got a kid that was abandoned in the street, and they adopted it. V'chein B'Parshas Lech Lecha Pirish Rashi Ubhanakas Shadayim, that she got a bracha in being able to nurse. Shenitzchol Lakach B'yoyim Mishta Shal Yitzchok Shayo Meranim Aleim She'eviu Asufim Men Ashok V'Oimrim B'neinuhu. And they just adopted a kid, but they said it's my own kid. Ve'evia kol achas b'noi ima u'mnei kasa lo'evia ve'hia nikas kulam. The style was that you used to have a nursemaid. Very important women didn't nurse their own children. They used to hire a nursemaid. In this case, they all came to the party and said, I forgot my nursemaid at home. She was busy. She had a dentist appointment. And Sarah went ahead and nursed all of these children. And that was a proof that obviously she gave birth, or else she wouldn't have been able to nurse. So the Rebbe says an interesting question. To do that, did Sarah have to be able to nurse all the kids over there? The lechurim tama davar hoyerakidei leichiach shesara yoldas Yitzchok ve'eino yasufi min hashuk hayamaspik shekulam yiru shebenikas Yitzchok. Got to go ahead and nurse all the other kids. Oy shetanik oyd kama bonim. Avalama hutzrcha lahanikas kulam. Ela shahaya b'zeh inyan noisef shanes the latest Yitzchok garam lekama v'kama in yonei hashpa v'ad l'rav schoik ba'olam v'lechein b'ole zel b'bitui gam b'zeh shehinika b'neim shel kol hasaris. She was now, and this is again the point that the Rebbe is going with this is that the purpose of the Yid is to bring down Rav Toiv ba'olam. Rav Toiv ba'olam has to come through the Yid. Valpizi yesh loy marash kishem shemetzin reitzol Sarah. Shanes the latest Yitzchok. Garam la'oid kama nisim etzlo b'schusam v'nisim sheviu Yeshua v'atzola ba'olam. Harbe akaras nifkedu ima nanu ima v'ad lahanik b'neim shel kol hasaros. Al derech zo b'negel Avraham. Shanes the latest Yitzchok garam la'oid nisim etzloi. Shenoldu loy oid banim b'derech pelo v'nes And what's about these children? What was Sarah's effect? Sarah's effect was also ba'olam. It was also on the rest of the world. Here also, what was Avram's effect? Ubanim elu eina bnei Yisrael elam u'misailam. These are not from the bnei Yisrael, but from u'misailam al derech hanal b'Sarah. It's similar to Sarah, just like Sarah's effect was on the whole world. The same thing by Avram having 6 more children. They weren't part of Klal Yisrael. So Avram affected the world as well. He brought new nations into the world. So he affected the world, just like Sarah affected the world. Elish, a time a boy. We need explanation for this. Ma'atam. Sha'nes, the latest Yitzchok garam la'oid nisim, she'yeschok ba'olam. Why? Seemingly, it should be a private nest. There was a lot of nisim that happened in the Torah. Why by Avraham and Sarah did their seemingly private nest that they were given a bracha to have a child, why did that have to affect the rest of the world? And if Sarah wouldn't have affected Roiv Chayk Ba'ilam, we know there's a rule that Eina Kadosh Baruch Hu Eis Nislam Agona. The Hashem does not make a miracle for nothing. Why all of a sudden when Sarah is getting a child, there's a lot of barren women will get children? A lot of sick people will get healed. What's the connection? Why should Sarah being helped affect the rest of the world? How Sarah affected the world and how Avram affected the world. Alf, Eitel Sarah is a puluzu ba'olam, taken from a yad, like we said before. Harbe akaras nifkedu ba'bayayim. V'chein zeh she'niku banim Sarah was immediate right then. The ilu it's Avram is a meshach zman rav arboim shana acher leidus Yitzchok, because earlier we don't see anything that Avram affected the world. Base etzel Sarah baze ketoitza memeila meleidus Yitzchok. She didn't have to do anything. Believe ulam yuchedes mitzad Sarah. Mashe enkin it's Avram is a keinyan b'fnei atzmam. Hayladas banim umas ha'olam Keturah b'ifnisi. He had to marry her. They had to have children together. So he had to do something to affect into the world. So he says, "V'yeshloimar shebazeh nirmaz inyan ikri v'yesoidi b'ashpas b'nei Yisrael b'umas ha'olam." Avram and Sarah had a main thing, a main message, what their job was to affect on the nations of the world. Let's not forget that in addition to Avraham and Sarah being the ones that began Klal Yisrael, they went around the world and they taught people to believe in the Eibishter. Even Arvayim sheishtachavu avot shal gabi ragleim, they also taught them about the Eibishter. So their purpose was, of course, to be Ma'amid Klal Yisrael, but they were also supposed to affect the entire world. And their effect on the entire world was not just beruchnius, but also begashmius, as we're seeing over here. So he says, "Dehine matzinu shekoydem leidus Yitzchok hayitzarach li shinui shmam shel Avram v'Sarah kipirish Rashi Avram ein loy ben aval Avraham yesh loy ben." When he changed the name from Avram to Avraham, v'chein Sarai loy teiled aval Sarah teiled. Changing the name from Sarai to Sarah made sure that they would give birth. What's the connection? We know the famous thing that changing a name changes a person's mazel, changes this shoydish of dam shakas from above. That's why we have a custom that someone that's chas v'shalom very sick, you change the name, you add a name, etc. The same thing, the changing of the name of Avram to Avraham and Sarai to Sarah was changing the mazel. But the Rebbe is going to add that you could have changed it to any name. Specifically, the fact that it was changed from Avram to Avraham and Sarai to Sarah, there's something in the teichen of those words that adds to what they had to do, what they had to accomplish with giving birth to Yitzchok. Avram v'Sarah. V'lechura tamur. Teichen Hashem is Avram v'Sarah b'yachas l'Avram v'Sarai. Moira ala shlita al kol ha'olam. Avraham goyim nisatich. Nisaticha, the Avraham is, I made you an Avraham goyim. I made you now over a lot of nations. Loidak Avram, which is Avlaram, in the place of Aram, where he grew up. That's where he was an Av. That's where he was in charge. But Av hamoin goyim nisaticha. Ela Av l'chol oil. V'sara pirusha kepirish Rashi. Loi sarai. What does the word sarai mean? Mine. The mashma li. She's my boss. She's over me. V'loi la'cherim ki Sarah tastam shema shetei Sarah ala koil. So, again, the question is, Sarah ala koil, Av hamoin goyim, what does that have to do with Yitzchok? Yitzchok is seemingly their own private simcha. It's their own private thing. Why does it make a difference? Avram, Av hamoin goyim, about Yitzchok. Sarai or Sarah l'chol ha'olam, if it's about their own private bracha of having Yitzchok. Umaya shaykes ben shinei Hashem esa'ela l'leidus Yitzchok, shvas chol sam Yisrael, ki bi Yitzchok yikara l'chazora. Umashma zeh she'inyan ikri b'leidus Yitzchok v'am Yisrael, hu ha'pe'ula v'ashlita al umas ha'olam. V'al-pizi yesh loymar, shezeu toichen inyan ha'nisim shebo behemshech l'leidus Yitzchok, שגרמו שירב שחוק באוילם. שהידי זה הודגש עניין הסררה שלהם על האוילם כולוי, שהם הגורמים שתהיה ישוע באוילם. ובזה גופה הישני סוגים. In what they affected on the world, both of them, with Yitzchok, it was not just about Yitzchok, but it was an effect on the entire world. And then there's two types of an effect on the entire world. Hayishnei sugim, anisim ha'sheyachim l'sara, va'anisim da'avram, ha'ilodus b'nei Keturah, behesem la'achiluk ben inyonish shel Avram v'inyonish shel Sarah, kidluk hamon, as we'll explain. So to be able to understand these two types of things and the effect of Yitzchok's birth on the entire world, the Rebbe is going to bring in the sugya of Bnei Noach. We know that a Yid has a chiyuv to teach people of the world that are not Yid about the Sheva Mitzvos Bnei Noach. And in that itself, he's going to bring from the Rambam, it's important that they do the Sheva Mitzvos Bnei Noach not just because it's right, and not just because Hashem said so, but because Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai to Am Yisrael, they should teach it to them. Let's see it inside. Yuvz abhegn divrei Rambam, oides chiyuv zayin mitzvah bnei Noach. Tziva Moshe Rabbeinu pia gvura, lokuf es kol boya olam lekabel mitzvah shnitztava bnei Noach. Kol makabel sheva mitzvah v'nizr la'asoysen harezem machaside umas olam v'yesh lechelik lo'olam haba. When is he considered chaside umas olam? V'hu sheyikabel oisam v'yasa oisam mepnei shetziva ben HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Torah v'idiyanu aydei Moshe Rabbeinu chum. But let's say he sees it's a nice thing to do to Sheva Mitzvos. It's logical. It'll make the world run nicer. Avol im osam me'achrei adas einem chassidei umas ha'olam. To be considered chassidei umas ha'olam, he needs to do it with the recognition that this was given to the Torah that Moshe gave to Am Yisrael. Mitzarchim, Harei Moshe Rabbeinu lo hinchla Torah mitzvah al Yisrael. Umaya shayches de bnei Noach lematan Torah lebnei Yisrael va'ad shebnei Yisrael tzrichim lokov es kol b'ay oil makabel mitzvah nishtav bnei Noach. And why? They should know behem yasu oisam nishatziva HaKadosh Baruch Hu came by Torah. Why is that necessary in what they're doing? In this Bible is a kamapam mimalpi ma'amer Chazal shekol abriya b'shvil Yisrael shenikra reishis and b'shvil HaTorah shenikra reishis. Like Rashi says right away in the beginning of Chumash Bereshis, he says, what's the meaning of Bereshis Bara Lakim? Bereshis Bara Lakim means Beis Reishis. There are two things that are called Reishis. Klal Yisrael is called Reishis to Asai, and Torah is called Reishis, and therefore the whole entire world was created for Yidden and Torah. Therefore, the Umas Ha'olam, what they do, has to fit into that type of ball, that type of category of Yisrael and Torah. The fact that Yidden do Torah, it's not that there's a world and there's a whole bunch of goyim, and then a little percent of the Goyim are Yidden, and they do Torah mitzvahs. No, the entire creation, everything in the world, is bound up with Yidden and Torah. A Goy in China with their ox plowing a field is connected to a Yid in wherever learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. לכן, לאחרי לידת עם ישראל ונשינס התורה, אי אפשר שיהיה איזה ציווי השם לעולם מבלי אמצעות התורה וישראל. It has to go that way. ולכן תלוי קיום שבע מצוות בני נוח בתורה וישראל. יש לדייק ברמב"ם הזה, שהרמב"ם הנ"ל, אשר שני הפרוטים הנ"ל, א', ציווה משה רבנו פי הגבורה לוקח כל בויה עולם לקבל מצוות שנצטווה בני נוח. בייס שצריך לעשות אויסם מפני שציווה בהן הקדוש ברוך הוא בתורה וידיענו על ידי משה רבנו כוספן הרמב"ם בשתי הלכות נפרדות. The Rebbe says that even the division of the halachas in the Rambam is very exact. And we could learn things just from the fact that the Rambam organizes the halachas in a certain way. Seemingly, it's part of the same idea. One idea is that Moshe Rabbeinu was told by Hashem to tell all the Goyim to observe the Sheva Mitzvos Noach. And another thing is, seemingly the same topic, that the Goyim that are doing it have to do it because they realize that it came from Moshe Rabbeinu and the Torah from the Eibishter. But the Rambam puts it into two separate halachas. Why does the Rambam divide it? Rambam behemshech lachiv lakav is called boyoil makabel mitzvah nitztav. Shechiv ze koil shekabolos ha mitzvah shalhem tiyam neishetziva hakadosh baruch hu b'toyram because of Tanai zevu shekabel chulu ba'alach v'fnei atzma. When he's talking about Bagdaris Chsidei Umas Oilam, and he wants to tell us what is considered Chsidei Umas Oilam, Muvan Shadin Ze, V'hu Sheyakabel Oisam Neishatziva Ben HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Toyram, Hu Din B'Fnei Atzmai. And the Rebbe says in the brackets an interesting idea. We have a chiyuv, Lakuf is called by Oilam, to convince all the people in the world to do the Sheva Mitzvah Bnei Noach. But since the Rambam divides into two separate halachas, do we have a chiyuv to convince all the goyim to do it because Moshe Rabbeinu gave it in the Torah from the Eibishter, or is our chiyuv only to convince them to do it? And then if they do it because Moshe Rabbeinu received it in the Torah, so that's then the Chassidei U'Misoilem. And to do it in this type of way, that would be considered Chassidei U'Misoilem, because they realized that Moshe Rabbeinu gave it to the Yidden in the Torah, etc. for them. It's two separate chiyuvim, like we said before, two separate obligations. Shleim HaKabbalah Shaben Noach Shetchilasa Ba Aidei Kfias Yisrael Shemekabla Mitzvos Machmas Tzivui HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Torah Yesh Gam Kein Lo Kesher in Bnei Yisrael. Even that has to be connected to the Yidden. That's why it's important to do it, because the Yidden got this in the Torah. Because the whole world is based on Yidden and Torah. So when the Goyim do their mitzvahs, it also has to be part of the Yidden and Torah. It can't be something separate from it. Then the Rebbe says, Aleph, hashpoai de kfir. Kfir could mean two types of kfir. Im kipshuta, when he says, Yad Yisrael tkifa, when the Yidden are in true control of Eretz Yisrael, not the way they are now, but really in control of Eretz Yisrael, so then they have an obligation to force all the Goyim in Eretz Yisrael to become Geri Toishav, that they should be Mekayim the Sheva Mitzvos Noach. Or there's through not literally forcing them, but convincing them, being mashpi on them. Lekabel mitzvah shenestav menoach. That's one thing. Beis peula ba'akifin shebehemshich lekfiyah zu boim u'masa'olam l'de'akara shetzrichim lekabel ha'mitzvahs memnei shetziva b'hem HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Torah v'yidiyanu aydei Moshe Rabbeinu And this is another aspect. Now the Rebbe is going to show how in the halachas having to do to the times of Mashiach, we also see this reflected about our effect on the Ummah Ha'olam and how we affect the Ummah Ha'olam. B'siyum beis ha'prakim ha'achronim shel Sefer Rambam b'soif hilchos malachim v'mokam. And it's also called Umelech HaMashiach, the Rebbe says in footnote 36. B'soif Perek Yud Aleph. Now again, note, it's two separate prakim. At the end of Perek Yud Aleph, Messiah Rambam about Mashiach, that what will Mashiach do? V'kibetz nitche Yisrael, v'yisaknas olam kulei lavetz Hashem b'yachad, the entire world, not just Yidden. Shenamar ki oz efach al amim, the nations of the world. Safa brura likrei kulam b'shem echad, b'shem Hashem ulav d'shchem echad. Now that's the end of Perek Yud Aleph. U'b'soif Perek Yud Beis Messiah, u'ba'oisei azman, the times of Mashiach, lo yisham lo rav chulu, and nothing negative anymore. Why? Sha'atoiva tia mushpas harbe chulu, v'lo yia esek kol oilam. Again, kol oilam, not just the Yidden. Elo adas Hashem belvad. And then the Rambam adds to that, ulefichach yiyu Yisrael chachamim gedolim, v'yoidim dvarim astumim, v'yasigu das boiram kifi koyach ha'adam, shenemar kimala aretz deas Hashem kamayim le'am mechas. So, what's the difference between these two prakim? Koloim. B'soif Perek Yud Aleph medubar oidus puls min Mashiach ubnei Yisrael b'umas ha'olam, v'yisakin es ha'olam kuloi chulu. V'ilu b'soif Perek Yud Beis medaber oidus hanifal b'umas ha'olam b'derech mameilam. It's an automatic type of thing. You remember? Just to keep you on track. Avraham and Sarah were different. You remember? Sarah was automatically. As soon as she was helped, harbe akaris nifkedu, harbe chaylim nisrapu, and so on. Avraham, we said, had to do something. He had to get married, he had to have children, etc. So he says, in Perek Yud Aleph, it talks about what he's doing. And in Perek Yud Beis, it's only talking about what's happening automatically. The Pashas Haloshim lo yiyeh esek kol ha'olam ol adas Hashem belvad. That's what it means, kol ha'olam. But even then, it's a result of the Yidden. Hein miles Yedias Hashem Bnei Yisrael, ve'hein ze she'esa kol ha'olam kula yiladas Hashem. V'aynu shezeh she'lo yi'esa kol ha'olam aladas Hashem b'levad yekosher v'teitzah mimatzav Bnei Yisrael bois hazman. It's connected. Yidden will be involved completely in the understanding of Hashem, and the entire world will be involved in it. From the fact that the Rambam puts it together in the same halacha, that means that one is an extension and a continuation and the result of the other. The Goyim being involved in it is a result of the Yidden being involved. Very interesting word that the Rambam says, and the Rebbe asked a very basic question on it. The Rambam says like this: you might think, that's what comes up from the Rambam, that the reason why Yidden are waiting for Mashiach is we're finally going to be able to boss around the world. We're finally going to be able to rule the world. We're going to be super strong, super powerful. We're going to be on top of the world. So the Rambam says, no, that's not the reason. Lo nisavu hachachamim v'anavim yemois HaMashiach lo kedei sheyishlatu al kol ha'olam v'lo kedei sheyirdu ba'akum. They should be controlling them. V'lo kedei sheyinasu oisam ha'amim, so that the nation shouldn't praise them and raise them up. But rather, why are the Chacham and Navim so interested in Mashiach coming? So the Rebbe says, does this even need to be said? We're talking here about Chachamim. We're talking here about Navim. It doesn't say your ordinary person in the street that doesn't know any better. It says the Chachamim and the Navim did not want Mashiach because to be able to be in control over the Goyim. ולחור תמוה איך יעלה על הדעת לפרש לסבא חכמים והנביאים ממועצת המשיח כדי שישלטו על כל העולם ירדו בעכו"ם כדי שינוסו איזם העמים והרי אפילו בנגיע לחכמי ומסע העולם מצינו שעיקר עסקם ומסעס נפשם ובמשכלס ואין להם תשוקה לשלוק ולרדויס וכל כן וקל וחומר שכנו בנגיע לחכמי נביא ישראל. So why does the Rambam even have to say such a thing? You know what? The Chachamim don't want this because of... The Rambam has to say that. So he's saying a different point. Ala kavonas haramami. The solka dait chamina, we would think, shetachlis hamayla, sheilan is ava chachamim chulu, he lesakin es ha'olam. They would think, finally, we can transform the world. Finally, we can uplift the goyim. Finally, we can get them to recognize Alakus. That's why we want Mashiach. The active hashpah, lesakin es ha'olam, to convince the goyim to serve Hashem. That's the true spiritual type of control. When we're talking about control and rulership, we're talking about teaching them and elevating them beruchnius. So one might think that that would have been the purpose of the Chachamim and the Nevi'im. They want Mashiach's times. We'll finally be able to convince the Goyim to follow the Sheva Mitzvos. We'll finally be able to teach them Malakus. The Kamashmal on the Rambam comes to teach us Kam. Shezeh eino shleimas ha'inyan. V'loi b'shvil zeh nisabah Chacham v'Nevi'im l'moisa Mashiach. Ela k'dei sheyiu pnuyim b'toira v'chachmasa v'yiu chachamim g'doilim v'yoydim dvar mastumim. But this doesn't mean that it won't affect the goyim. They, by doing what they're doing, it will automatically affect the goyim. Like Sarah. I'm giving you already what he's going to say later on. Like Sarah, where her bracha affected everybody around her. Aval afal pikein mamshech kanal. שגם דרגה ניילה זודם לישראל פועלס בעולם. שבדרך ממילא יהיה מעצב כל העולם באופן ניילה ביוסר, שלא יהיה עשר כל העולם אלא דעס השם בלבד חולו שנאמר כי מה לארץ דעס השם כמים למחסים. It's automatically the world, because of their involvement in such high things, it pulls in everybody else as well. It becomes fashionable now. It becomes exciting now. It becomes fun now to be involved in holy things, in understanding Elokus and so on. Now he brings it back to Avraham and Sarah. Al pikol now yuvim gam teichna inyan shekoydim leidus Yitzchok hayetzarech liyishinu Hashem da Avraham and Sarah ava mon goyim v'Sarah al koil ki bereishis yitziras am Yisrael by lodus Yitzchok ad Avraham and Sarah hayetzarech liyis mudge shemitziusam shal Yisrael eina inyan uprat ba'abriya Elahi Iker umataras klolas abriya kula. As soon as Avraham and Sarah had to have the child, we had to right away realize and emphasize it's not just about you. It's not just about Klal Yisrael. This is not a private miracle just for Avraham and Sarah. It's not even a private miracle just for Am Yisrael. It's supposed to impact the entire world. V'zeu gam hatam shel lidos shel Yitzchok. בדרך נס, היסה באופן כזה, שפועל באומס העולם כנ"ל, הרבה הקורס נפקדו עמו, הרבה חולים נשרפו בו ביום, הרבה תפילס ננו עמו, ורב שחוק היה בעולם. ותוספס השפעה שבשרה באופן דעניקה בונים שרה. ועל דרך זה באברהם, שהפלא והחסד אברהם בילודס יצחק פועל גם שהוליד עוד שישה בונים מקטורה. Ki kedei shebnei Yisrael yuchlu lifal alumas olam later on. How will we be able to do that later on throughout history until Mashiach's times? It already had to start with Avraham and Sarah. Ha'isap'ulam yuchedas aydei HaKadosh Baruch Hu shegam umas ha'olam yargishu davar ze gufam. She'ikir mitziusi shal ha'olam koil de mitziusam de bnei Noach hu Yisrael. It's important for the goyim themselves to realize this, how part and parcel of their very being and existence is interconnected with the Yidden. It's not two separate things. There's the Yidden and there's them. They have to realize this, that Yidden is the core of their entire existence. Who was the Navi of the Goyim, so therefore he could tell them what's going on. That we're hearing the sounds of Matan Torah, they didn't know what it was. Shema Mabel Ba'loilam, they were worried. Amar Lahem, so Bilam told them, Chemda Toiva Yeshler Beis Gnazav Chulu, Ubikesh Litna Labanim Shanema Hashem Oizlami Yitin Miyad Paschu Kulam Va'amru Hashem Yivarach Sam V'Shalom. All the Goyim had to realize that the Torah was being given to the Yidden. Why? Because it's important for who they are and what has to be accomplished with them to realize that the entire world is affected by and connected to Torah and Yidden. Like we said before, that the Eibusha doesn't make a nest for nothing. It's an obvious thing why Hashem doesn't do miracles for no reason. The kivun shakadosh baruch hu kavas abriya ba'oifim mesudra v'tivi lo yishbaisu, that the seder of the world should not stop. Lo yishana sidrei abriya alo tzarich miyuchad. If there's a special reason to, so then Hashem will change things around. V'imkein tamua mawa tzarich v'hechrech janes the latest Yitzchok yavi v'yigroim la'oid nisim heinika banim Sarah v'chulu. Kanas Yase Nes God Kazeh Shaharbe Akaris Nifkedu Chulu Hepech Tava Abriya. Why did they Mr. make such a thing? Elo Shaloi Hoya Bazen Nes Noisef. This was an outgrowth. This was a result of what happened with Sarah. Kiim Hemshech V'Teitzam Miklolos Anes Shaleides Yitzchok. Ki Leides Yitzchok Loi Hoysa Nes Prati. Rak La Avram V'Sarah. Ella neskloli melachatchila kadeshatia latest Yitzchok nas Avram v'Sara avlach olam v'Sara alakoil over derech hamela kitcheira anes nifol v'nimshach b'chol olam u'b'choil v'nishtanu sidrei bereishis koil olumas olam, not just their own private thing. Hinei b'pulus anes latest Yitzchok olumas olam gufim hayu shnei pratim mitzad Avram u'mitzad Sara kanal. The way Avraham had it, the way Sarah had it, hey mashoyde shel shnei fanim anal b'fulus Yisrael alumas ha'olam ubehesem la'achiluk b'toichen avodas Avraham v'Sara hamudgish gam b'shma machadesh sheniten lam lefnei ledes Yitzchok. That their names actually show the different types of avodah. Is it active or automatic? Is it passive or active? Avraham al shem Av hamoin goyim of lechol ha'olam moira al shayches lahamoin goyim kol ha'olam v'lechein gam hashpa hanisis shenasa al yodoi behamoin goyim hoysai de peulam yuchedes b'sad Avram lahoysif ba'olam vayoysef Avram vayikach isha goymer vatelet loy goymer umetamze ba loy bekirvas man loy lodas Yitzchok. It's a new activity, it's a new thing. Yes, it was a result of the previousness, but it was something that he had to do actively, something new. Being moved means that things happen automatically. The king wants, it happens. He doesn't have to do something. He doesn't have to be active. He sits back and it gets done. So we will all flow to him like a river. V'holchu amim rabim v'amru l'chu v'nailu el har Hashem al beis el keyankiv v'yareinu midracha v'neilcha berchosav shemitzad zeh shagilui l'bnei Yisrael yibetachas hashleimas hareze yashpia b'derech meila al goyim v'amim rabim ad la'matzav d'mola ha'aretz de'as Hashem kamayim l'yom chasi. So we see an amazing thing, by the way, that our effect on the Umas Ha'olam has to be in such a type of way that it's for their benefit. That it's not about Chas v'Shalom, a Gvura type of thing, like we said, about bossing them around. This hashpah on Umas Ha'olam that comes with the Sheva Mitzvos Noach is also supposed to bring brachas on Umas Ha'olam. That they should be successful in what they're doing. Just like Sarah brought brachas on Umas Ha'olam, just like Avraham Avinu created 6 new nations with Keturah, etc.